The Samuel Jackson line has been laid down on Bandmate, and that's what we're going to be discussing in this episode of Wood, Air, and Metal number 6? 5, 6. So I can't count.
I think it was easier when it was like 43 or something.
Yeah, when I got up higher with the numbers, it was much easier to keep track of.
Now it's like, what season and what number, and like we had to reset.
Yeah, and got it like, we should actually like write it down, but why? Cheers with the jam and juice on that. What is that?
Oh. It's a man driving a small car.
I meant the name of the beer.
Here, I'll let you say it out loud. See if you can read it. Oh man, the light is weird.
Hoof-hearted brewing.
Say it again.
Hoof-hearted brewing.
Isn't it hoof?
Hoof, which something, I don't know.
Hoof-hearted?
You're oh, nice. I'm like reading it seriously. Hoof-hearted.
Who says hoof? Is that a buffalo thing?
Probably. That's where I was born and raised, so I have that all those little idioms there.
Like huff-hearted.
Very nice. That's
yeah. Man, every one of theirs that we've tried, like, they're amazing.
Oh, that's okay. All right, I'll put it on the list.
They're in Columbus, so when I was in Columbus, I played a gig in Columbus.
Yeah. How did that go?
Good. It was a cool, like, it's this new spot they have down there that they're trying to build up. It was only the third, like, jazz event they had, and
oh, cool.
It was cool. It was at this church, and, like, that they're sort of, I don't know, revamping, or it's like a very open church.
Okay.
And there's just people from like the neighborhood or whatever coming down, and like it's real artsy and stuff. So pretty neat.
Very cool. Was it like did you get power? Because I think you were texting me that you lost power.
Oh no, it was cold. It was so cold.
Was it because of no power, or it was just a cold?
No,
thing?
it was just cold. Yeah, I mean it was cold because it was super cold that day.
Yeah, it was like.
And then it was like an old, it's like a church, like drafty church.
So older church.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like one of the oldest, maybe the oldest church in Columbus or something, or it's got a really long history.
That's going to be cold. It's like drafty is an understatement.
Yeah, it was chilly. But and it was cool. It's always great to like meet new people and
oh yeah, man,
sort of grow your thing. And that was with the Night Terrace project, the acoustic Night Terrace project. And it was a receptive crowd, and it was nice.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So they're trying to make it a thing, and like there's still more stuff they need to do, but those like artsy spaces, I really like playing those generally. There's usually like a built-in crowd, and they're really in, like the people that like want to hear stuff,
There's a big thing.
Very open-minded, and I don't know, it's a good scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, it allows you to be creative, like really be creative. Like there's other gigs where you can quote unquote be creative, but you know that you're pushing the boundary because of the audience.
Yeah.
Versus other people that are like, all right, I'm here to experience something new. Show me, And I think that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Very cool.
While heading there, I got a call, and I'm not gonna say from who. We're gonna keep names out of all this, but okay. So I got a call from a person I'm doing a project with. It's actually been about a year now. This is a recording project. And I was trying to figure out where I was going, so I didn't answer when I first got there. So then when I arrived, I looked, and he left a message. He's like, hey, man, call me back. And then I looked at my email. And so there was a project I was doing with, it's 4 people. And the one person asked me to, so one of the people, the person who called me, asked me to join because the guitar player they had before, just wasn't cutting it or whatever. And taking too long with everything, blah blah blah. So I'm like, sure, let's do it. So part of that was like taking too long. So I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And I started getting tracks, and I took it upon myself like, hey, these need to get done quick. So most of the stuff I turned around within 3 days. Now, this was a pretty open-ended kind of project. There was no real direction. Like I kept asking for direction, like, what do you want? But I would just get these tracks, like, oh yeah, man, lay your stuff down or whatever. And then I would send the tracks back, and then I'd send like a mix back of what it was, and I'd be like, hey, is this what you're looking for? Is this cool? And everybody think these like big thumbs up, like awesome, cool, blah blah blah. And I'm like, all right, as we're going along. And then so there was like, I don't know, 8 tracks, 10 tracks, something like that. Put a good amount of time in it. And then it kind of just disappeared for a while. So, and then I would say too, like, I mean, I did it right. Like I had multiple mics and amps and,
Yeah.
I really treated it like something, unique. And I try to treat every song a little bit different, and hopefully like a lot of like little ear candy kind of stuff throughout. And I used all kinds of pedals and just different sounds and different guitars and different amps, and just it's very colorful kind of recording. And it was it was kind of weird about like nobody told me anything. There was no charts or anything. It was just like, here's the music, add your parts.
Yeah.
So some of it like didn't have much direction or whatever. So I tried to add like melodies, or sometimes it had sort of a melody, but then I would do something else. Sometimes it was not the greatest, and I tried to do something with it. But I think overall it came out kind of cool. I mean, it was just an interesting project. Anyway, got all that done, and then it just sort of disappeared. I mean, I think the last thing I recorded was June of last year, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a while.
Yeah, I think it started like March to like June. See, it was kind of funny too. It was like, oh, we have like the other guy he was taking too long or whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, just give me all the tracks. But then like they weren't done. I don't know. It was kind of weird. But whatever. It was what it was. And then they're even talking like, oh, we should probably get like a record label in this and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, cool, whatever. I'm like, and assuming this whole time that like they're listening to what's going on and whatever vibe I was going, because I'm just like, there was no direction at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So then I was like a month or two ago, maybe a month ago. There was a guy who was mixing all of it. So he spent all his time, he mixed it, whatever, he sent one of the tracks back. And all of a sudden those other two people, like, so the guy who asked me to do it, I guess, like, loved it. He thought it was super cool. And then one of the other people were like, the bass is too quiet and the vibe is totally wrong and blah 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 blah.
Yep.
And I'm like, and there's this one part where there's wrong notes.
I remember that fiasco.
Yeah. There's some wrong notes. Now, mind you, this is a completely open thing, and there's a lot of weird like atonally things through all of it.
Yep.
And just like dissonant sounds and things like that. So it was just sort of a really weird comment. And so initially my response was like, well, if you don't like that part, just take it out. I don't care. And then the other person wrote, and they're like, well, this is interesting. Definitely wrong notes. Whatever. I'm like, what? Okay. And then the like, I'm not sure about the vibe, but everybody should probably get their place to shine in this or whatever. And I'm thinking like, dude, the mix was cleaned up a bit, but it basically generally sounded like the mix that I sent back, in terms of just on your phone or whatever, it's going to sound about the same.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be until you heard it through headphones or like a good speaker system or whatever that you would notice it. And it was funny, he was like, the bass is too quiet. And I was like, I listened to it on my stereo with sub, and the bass was just like flooring, and like it was probably too loud. And I'm like, but whatever. I didn't really care. I'm not like being. It is it's like this project, like whatever. Just let it be, and I'm glad somebody did the work, and it still sounded pretty cool, And I don't mind it that it was like, it's kind of cool when you listen to something with a sub and it just like floors you, It's a cool vibe. He's like, well, I listened on my phone or whatever. He's like, maybe it was better. So I'm like, you commented on the mix and stuff like that, but you listened to it like on your iPhone, like speaker or whatever. Like, I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
But then it was just like, they couldn't let the whole thing go. And you're like, if a classical musician plays the wrong notes in a symphony or some crap. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing. And I'm like, first off, you might think it's wrong, but you're wrong. Like, who are you to like? I don't think it's wrong. It was like a harmonic movement of you could do almost anything with harmony.
Like, I remember listening to that track, trying to find the quote unquote wrong note that you were talking about, and trying to ignore the timestamp because, like, this is the thing that. So it's like I hit play and I'm closing my eyes and I'm listening. Like, okay, where's something wrong? Something wrong. Okay, I'm not hearing it. Like, given the in the context of the vibe of everything that was going on with that track, it made sense. It wasn't like, oh, nope. That's
it was just kind of weird. But I don't even care about any of that. I don't even care about anything that I played. So one of the things that happens, it's actually one of the coolest, I think, like guitar, like playing that I've done on any recording on this particular song. At the end of the song, like, it's just really like kind of a cool guitar solo sort of thing that happens. It just has a vibe about it, and these these ascending run things or whatever. And I'm like, it just had a cool vibe. And it doesn't sound like anything that I've really heard before. Like, I can't really be like, I mean, there's certain parts that sound sort of like something or this, but generally I thought it was kind of original sounding project. Mm-hmm. So I tried to, be kind of, but then they're like, just kept being more and more negative. And I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, I started saying, like, this is stupid. And I actually stopped reading any more emails from them. Because I'm just like, I'm like, for one, I'm like, I sent you these things forever ago. And the guy who mixed it, he's like, he sent you this stuff. Like, if you had a problem, like, you're telling me in like the last 9 months, you didn't take the 3 minutes. It's like a 3.5 minute song or something. You didn't take 3.5 minutes to just listen and see if it was like the vibe you were looking for. And now you're gonna.
Yes, exactly. Like, and I'm interjecting a little bit because.
No, go for it. Yeah, I've been talking for a while.
No, you're fine. But the thing that annoyed me about that is, like, when you're telling me about this whole situation, I'm like, did they not have this for months? Like,
they've had that particular one at least 10 months.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, if you sign off on something 10 months ago, like with a thumbs up or whatever it is, I'm assuming it's fine. And then
man, every single track I uploaded, I'm like, is this what you're looking for? Is this the kind of vibe you want?
Yep.
Like, hey, check it out. I put this recording. You could check it out real quick. Does that sound good? And they just be like, forward motion, cool, go, yeah. Like, I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
My impression was that they must have like at least like scanned through it and say, like, there was no indication. They were like, you know what? We're not going to check this out till it's mixed. Like, there was none of that.
Yeah, and it was like, why would you do that? Like, it's
just kind of weird. Like, what a waste of time. Like, what a waste of time. Anyway, so on the way down there, the reason I got a call was because those two people, like, excused themselves from the project. Mm-hmm. They said, our tracks will no longer be usable, blah, blah, blah. So not only did they waste my time, right?
They wasted their own
and then
time.
we're completely unprofessional, like, not even listening to it, like, like, not even the common courtesy to be like, we're not going to listen to it until it's done. At least I would, like, there was nothing like that. It was always like, man, awesome, cool, great, glad you uploaded it, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for, it was like that, like, thanks, cool, awesome, And then there was, like, oh yeah, I know Tim's going to shred all over this or whatever. Like, there was stuff like that,
Yeah.
And I'm like, whatever, cool, if that's what you want. Like, I don't know. Like, that was the only comment from the one person was, Tim's gonna shred all over this. So I was like, I'm thinking like, is that what you want on the next track or whatever? Like, is that like I don't know. So, but then they wasted all the time of the guy who mixed it. Like,
Yeah.
he told me he spent a bunch of time on it, like hours and hours and hours on it. I don't know, just what an unprofessional situation.
Yeah, well, it clearly shows that they weren't listening to things to begin with, which is a huge red flag. Like, at least you know now, but you figured that when you send it and you get immediate, or quote unquote, close to immediate feedback, you're assuming that they listened to the thing.
Like, see, I mean, so we were using like Dropbox or whatever, and you would upload the files, or I'd upload the files. They had the files, I'd download them. I'd work on it for a couple of days. I'd upload the new files. I usually put like 2 to 4 guitar, depending on what it was, because sometimes I'd have 2 different mics. Or whatever, and I'd have a stereo track or whatever. Anyway, I'd upload those files, and then I'd upload a mix of it, like an MP3 small, like something that was not the WAV files that would take like 7 years to download or whatever. It was like no time at all. You could easily put it on your phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And but then like it was kind of weird because they'd be like, okay, those are all uploaded, cool. Well, I'm gonna take it down the next day. Like it was like the next day or whatever. They would take them down to save space, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, hey, everybody got them that needed them. We're gonna delete this so we still have space, so we don't have to pay Dropbox or whatever.
Yep.
See, I don't know. It was just like, what a lame way to be in a project.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just seems like this Kurt. I mean, I would never, ever, ever, ever recommend either of them for anything ever, and I would highly recommend people to look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like I was playing with like Jocko or something like that. It's not like
I get it.
They don't like get away with like it wasn't playing with like the all-star cast of greatest musicians on the planet or something. It was just. Though you couldn't tell necessarily from some of the emails I saw.
Yeah. Yep.
But, so like, I guess we were just, I was like, man, we should talk about this. I need to vent about it a little bit. So
yeah, no, it sounds like they just didn't care to look at it, first of all. And then secondly, to come back after that much time, it's just like, dude, what? Like, you told me months ago this was fine. Thumbs up. Go ahead and do the work. Okay, fine. So you're taking their input and you're putting it out there,
right?
And assuming everything's fine. And then
I would even say like, hey, like the one track, which we didn't even hear, and I don't think they've ever heard because they didn't listen to anything. I'm like, there was like a track where it had this pretty awesome, like I don't remember what time signature. It was like a 13 or something. The way the drum started. Mm-hmm. And it had this kind of like prog metal thing happening,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to use the Mesa on that. Like just ripping like, Genty Mesa, whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, this is what I would explain like what I did, I was explaining, oh yeah, I used the fuzz in this. There's a ring modulator. I used this. I did that. There's this effects thing and there's a stereo track with da-da-da-da. I'm like, how much more professional could I have been on any of that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care. Like, they could have, say I did, because I've done this before too, where I've done projects, and then like they cut like 90% of the stuff that you send them, and they use 10% of it.
Yeah.
And that kind of stinks because you're like, man, why did I spend so much time on it? And they only wanted that 10%. But whatever. It's like their project and they could do it. But this wasn't their project, by the way. This was everyone's project.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, even if they would have done that, though, they'd be like, well, can we delete this and that? And like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to like. And also, I was going to say, if that was going to be the case, if they were going to say like, well, can we remove that part? Sure. Can we remove that part? Sure. Remove that whole like solo thing at the end, sure. But then I was gonna be like, can we remove that part, the keyboard part there? Can we remove the bass part there? Can we remove this part here? Can we remove that? If that was gonna be the dialogue, if that was gonna be the kind of like relationship that we were gonna have, sure, whatever. Then we're all gonna start cutting everybody's stuff, And maybe that would have made a better project. That I'm not going to say that it wouldn't have,
Yeah,
because
you just don't know.
I
So,
don't know.
yep.
So I would have been open to that. It was the like elitist bullcrap, you
Hmm.
know, like this is the
I
way it
remember
is.
I recorded you way back. God, this must have been
Oh, and yeah, the one
at the
School of Music or
yeah,
whatever.
that
Yeah,
that Fairlawn School of Music, or what was at the time Fairlawn School of Music. We like took over the whole house
yeah,
there with your mace in the other room, and
yeah,
yeah, I remember that. That was back with my Pro Tools days
yeah,
versus then. So, and then we got like I loved the stuff that you were doing when we were recording and laying it over, and then you sent
yeah.
me the final idea back, and I was like, "What the hell did this guy do to this?" You know,
He
it's
took
like
out like so much of it. Yeah,
all the stuff that I thought was killer and should have stayed was gone outside of like little, like, at a 5 minute track, you maybe had like 90 seconds of guitar
right.
out. It was like,
Yeah, I remember
what?
that one too. I think there was two songs if I remember right, but maybe it was, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. It was,
This is another pet peeve that's going on in my head right now too, but
oh, let's
which
hear
is
it.
but this is I felt like in that case that there was like no melody. Like there was no melody at all. So I added a melody with the guitar
Mhm.
in that one, and he was like, "Well, this shouldn't be. It should be done by the other instrument." I'm gonna try to be even more anonymous, but the other instrument should have done the
Yeah, yeah.
melody.
Yep.
And I'm just like, but there is no melody. Like, so like that's fine, but could you play a melody then? Because like it just
Yeah,
sounds like a
exactly.
backing track. Um, and that was another one where he was like, "Oh yeah, do whatever you want." Still, that was actually like his project, like
Hmm.
his thing. So whatever. Like, I mean, I didn't. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I tried to give something good. If you only like 3 seconds, I mean, I'm sure this happens to like every studio, like professional ever,
Yep.
where they do like stuff for people and they do it all the time, and then like they hear back on the radio, like, wait, you used that take, and that's the you turned me down like the entire rest of the.
Yeah.
The only thing I heard was
Well,
dee doo dee doo doo, and like I was like, but hey, I guess I got paid for it or
that happened
whatever.
to Eric Johnson. There was like some 70, like late 70s hit. I think I was watching it on Rick Beato's channel. It was like 1979, this huge hit, and the electric guitar solo is next to completely silent. And he's like, it was an outro solo, so it kind of makes sense because everything's fading out. But he's got a hold of the stems and brought the volume back up, and I'm like, oh my god, that sounds like Eric Johnson. And he's like, that's a young Eric Johnson laying it down, but they totally just like got rid of it. He's like, the solo is killer, but they totally
Yeah.
like, damn, that sucks, But
Yeah, I mean, it
yeah,
is what it is.
yeah,
That
I
feels
get
a
it.
little different.
That
I was gonna
yes,
say that was the pet peeve of mine, which I think I suggested to you. That is very much seems to be in like heavy music right now, and I mean like non-commercially heavy music. So don't say Neil or Joe Satriani, because
yeah,
not that they're commercial successes, but they're playing more towards like
yeah, I get
simple
it.
song, whatever. But like in the like the heavy, more like progressive or fusion, whatever, just like completely like a lack of melody. I don't really get it. Like a few albums, I'm gonna say the last 2 years. I'm like, I don't know, a few. Like it seems like most of the big name players or bands in those genres are just like putting out backing tracks. I don't really get it. And some of them are actually really good at doing melody, and they've proven that previously. But now just, it's like could be like odd times or just like a texture thing. And there might be like a really cool riff.
Yeah,
And I think that a lot of times they're thinking the riff is the melody, but the riff isn't a melody. I mean, in the cases I'm thinking of, they're not really melodies, and they're not interesting enough, or they're cool enough for a backing track, but they need some development or something. And then there's like the
yeah.
lack of complete development in any melodies. Um, yeah, so that reminded me the other
No, no,
project. It's like, well, why not try? And I have a
mhm.
whole pet peeve. I mean, melody's a weird thing, right? Because like
Yep.
it's so easy to go to college and learn everything in the world about rhythm and learn everything in the world about harmony. They're very It's easy to quantize them or whatever, or not quantize. What's the word?
Qualify
them, right? Yeah, I mean, it's like you can break it up in these pieces, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's like, here's how you get this chord. Here's how you get this chord. Oh, you can put 7/5, and this is how it works. And
Mhm.
any complex rhythm you can think of, it's really easy to come up with ways to tell somebody how to do it, which is also sort of easy to impress people too. Like, and I think that's what happens with a lot of like the heavier, more obscure bands is it's so much easier to write like a riff that flips from 13 to 19 in G sus sharp 5 flat, 9 kind of tonality or whatever. Like you can do that. That's kind of easy, in a sense, but it sounds so cool, and like people will be like, "Man, that's the coolest. They're the awesomest."
Have you seen that meme with Tosin Abasi, where he's like, when you meant to play, or when you're playing a C sharp minor 9 flat 11 7 or 13, and the rhythm guitar player plays a C sharp minor
forgets
9,
to play the 13th.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got like the snide look, and it's like, yeah, I get. It's funny because there's well, it goes back to the old thing of like difficulty being the showpiece rather than the melodic content.
Well, what I was going to say, like,
and there's something to be said for that, but yeah, sure. I get what you're saying.
Well, those things are easy to do. I mean, they're easy to explain, really. I mean, they're a little abstract if you're not a musician, or if you're a musician who doesn't like to think about the math side of it. But if you're open to the math side of music, in sense like rhythm and harmony, like it's so easy. Like it's sort of elementary, but it's abstract, but it's pretty elementary math. And once you show some rules, you could probably show like a 10-year-old who is sort of bright, like how to come up with any chord ever and how to name it. And you probably would only take you a couple days to like get through to them. So it's not. Now, maybe they wouldn't understand all the functional things that move, but any of that stuff's like teachable. But melody is very interesting because it's hard to come up with rules for it. Because every rule you could come up with, you could probably find an exception to the rule.
Well, that's welcome to music theory in general.
But I mean, in harmony, that's a little different because
no,
we don't. Well, in harmony, we don't tend to say good and bad harmony or good and I mean we kind of can.
We do. But we do
that. I'm trying to think. Well, it's a little like less objective. I mean, there's more objective, I should say, in that like you might be able to say, well, if you had like bad voice movement or whatever, those kind of things, but that's something you can teach too. It's very like logical. You can
then you have ideas like Babbitt where the voice leading conceptions are just gone, like
sure,
it's all stereo stuff.
Well, art becomes a kind of another thing, but in general, like what we consider like, I don't want to say mainstream, but even like not Babbitt,
well, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So, but like
not Babbitt. That narrows it down to everything.
But I mean, you could ignore a lot of the sort of like, let's say, intentionally fighting the rules music, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even mean like odd time signatures fighting the rules. I mean like we're gonna not play the same. We're gonna intentionally not have any like resolutions or anything like that.
Or non-retrogradable rhythms or anything.
Yeah, we're gonna, like that. And that's all great music too. That's not a knock.
Yeah.
I'm just picking on a little bit more like, hey, we're using some kind of something that at least more people can relate to or something. I don't know how to qualify this without sounding like it's sounding horrible. But anyway, melody is like, you can't really make any great comments about it. People tend to say stuff and it's very wishy-washy. Like, well, the melody should probably ascend and descend in some way, Yeah, and if you haven't had, like, if you've had a bunch of small little intervallic moves, you should have a leap,
followed by a leap followed by a stepwise descent.
Yeah,
those are all typical things.
But that you could find plenty of examples where that wasn't true and they were still great melodies, or like maybe it doesn't happen for a while, and maybe it happens a little too long, but then actually that's kind of creates the melody even better because now there's this weird tension that needs to drop, and it still doesn't drop, and it still doesn't drop, and then it drops, and then you're like, oh, it's so satisfying or whatever. So melody is kind of a funny thing, and then there's dynamics, and then there's articulation, and all these kind of things. You couldn't really say, well, make sure you articulate every third note or whatever. You can't say stuff like that. Make sure you articulate on the strong beats of the measure. Or you can't say that because that's not true. You can't make any real comments about it. We just sort of know when it's good and when it's not. It's a very odd, kind of interesting thing. I'm saying all this because it's harder. It's way harder to write a great melody in a lot of ways than it ever has been to do any of the rhythmic or harmonic things. And because those things are, you can quantify those. You could learn about it. You could find out what everyone's doing with those things and repeat it, and the results would be what you expect. But when you do that with melody, it's not always what you expect. You can't just like map some rules. Really, though, it's probably not the worst idea to try to start making good melodies. But regardless, that's just one aspect of it. And then there's the whole, like, great melodies have this, they're constantly evolving and growing, and something should happen to them as the song goes along that just seems sort of logical in a way, but it's not logical like we've just suggested.
Yeah.
It's like, it has to fit in all these things. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. So I think that's why a lot of times in these heavier bands, I'm going to just pick on those for the most part. Heavier, let's say more obscure, not trying to write like pop songs kind of bands.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. And it's way easier just to put out the quote unquote backing track with all the cool time signature stuff and weird harmony and stuff like that and layers and just make it real tight. And then you're like, oh look, and then people will be like, oh, that's so cool. But then there's no melody. And I think the reason I'm gonna try to bring this home.
Back. Yep.
Bring it home, which is the reason melodies are hard is because they take time. So I think that people can make good melodies. Probably most people could make good melodies, but you have to keep working it. Like where you could write all the like harmonic stuff and like you kind of know the rules enough that you could probably do without ever listening to it and it'd be generally good. You could put like rhythmic things if you know sort of what they sound like, and you could pretty much like map a song out without ever hearing it and have a general idea that it sounded good without anything, but you can't really do that with melody. So the melody one, you have to go through and you try some stuff and you're like, that's not really working, or okay, maybe that's kind of working, but then you got to come back the next day and you got to work on it again and the next day, and it takes time, and it might take you a year or whatever. Maybe it takes your whole life to work on this melody and constantly like improve it or whatever. Like,
I think that was one of the things, and I'm going to pull this back to still one of my favorite guitar players, Satch. Because the guy has a great ear for a melody. He really does. Like, his stuff sings. If he got a singer and wrote out the guitar lines, you could totally match that.
Yeah.
I remember reading an interview with him. He's like, yeah, it took me like 10 years to come up with something for this one track. He's like, I had like the end of it like set like as a tape, and he's like, it was always hooky, but I could never get somewhere to lead into it to where it was like, all right, this gels. He's like, sure I could have just slapped something on it, and then he's like, and it was like one of the bigger hits. I can't remember which one of it, but it was like all of a sudden it just like boom, this kind of like came out of it. And
I will say, and this maybe isn't fair, but the more like standard progressions and poppier songs like Satch does, it's a little bit easier to do melodies there. And the reason why, the reason why, beyond just that the chords are simpler or something like that, is that we have so much information from, like, we've heard so many songs, like, even if you aren't copying a song or whatever, like, you've heard that progression so many times in so many variations that were good, that you just have this like reservoir of ideas you could use that would probably be pretty good because you've heard it a thousand times, and or millions of times, So it's a little bit easier to pull from that and be like, okay, well, this kind of has this vibe, and okay, yeah, and I could hear this melody going here and this chord. Like you just have this whole but so in the more obscure music when it's not following the common chord progressions, common time signatures and stuff like that, there's a lot of that's just not there to pull from. So you really have to like work it out. It would be interesting to take someone like a Satch and put him in a project like a Dillinger's Escape Plan or something like that.
That would be kind of cool.
And then tell him to come up with a melody for all of it and see if he could even do it, and if it would be any good. Or would it be, what I mean? What would happen? Would he be able to do it or not be able to do it? Would it, it's funny. It reminded me, Chick Corea, he passed away a year ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe a little
months,
more.
I think. Yeah.
And, anyway, he did a thing at the Blue Note for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks in New York City. It's a famous jazz club. And he had a different project every night with different, like McLaughlin was there the one night and Victor Wooten another night, and then his acoustic band the one night, and electric band another night. And in every set, it's like 3 hours of music that was all different than every other night for I think it was 2 or 3 weeks for 7 nights a week. Every night was a different project. Just imagine that for one. Just an absolutely ridiculous musician, and a lot of the music was really hard. A lot of it had written parts that were hard to do.
Yep.
And he had this stuff just in his head. Imagine having, what is it 40 hours of music that you could play, written music that you could play, basically. Anyway, McLaughlin was talking about how McLaughlin does all this weird time signature stuff, and here's Chick Corea. This is how good of a musician he is. 40 hours of music in his head, and he's like, oh man, he's like, you're gonna bring some odd time stuff, maybe we could do something in 7, but I can't play on any your stuff. I can't do it, John. I can't. And John's trying oh man, check out this song though. I think you're gonna like this one. And he's like, I like it, but I can't play. I don't know how to play on that song that's in 13 or whatever. So even though he's just a monster musician, and maybe it would have been kind of fine, he did not feel comfortable at all doing anything with something in 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's not many better musicians that's ever been on the planet than that guy. And he was so I wonder, if you put someone like Satch who just doesn't live in that world where there's weird time signatures and atonal harmony and 12-tone stuff or whatever, would he still be good at melody in that situation?
I don't
know. I'm not going to say he wouldn't be, but I'm saying it's an interesting thing to think about because it's more challenging. Yeah, and I think that's why people like Stravinsky or whatever just blow me away. The melodies are so strong, and the music can it just feels so free and open, and I don't know, it's just so strong, and there's not that many people that have been that good at that thing. But it's hard to do. It just he has to be. Wasn't he? He's a big tinkerer, right? He was just oh, this didn't work, or that didn't work. He wasn't like Mozart, who just wrote it out, or allegedly.
No, he definitely did. No, Mozart totally did do that.
No, I know. I hear it. I was just kind of making fun of him, but you can kind of tell too. But a lot of it. But so anyway, Stravinsky was a tinkerer, and he, constantly going back and forth. Oh, well, I wonder if I did this instead, and whatever.
I just actually saw a picture of him today, acting all casual with a big grin on his face.
Oh, Stravinsky, nice.
Yeah, it's oh, okay, happy Stravinsky Day.
There's a cool YouTube video where he's talking about his writing with an apprentice he has there or whatever. It's kind of interesting.
Because he was at Oberlin.
Was
for
he?
a while. He was a composer in residence. Yep.
Huh.
Which I was really? I thought he was dead by then, but apparently not. It was in the 60s. So I was that's kind of wickedly cool.
Yes.
So, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but I think that just it's one of those like it just takes time to make the melodies that work in those situations, and I don't want to say it's lazy, but there's a little bit of like I want to say lazy. I think it's a laziness, and this is a reflection on me as well. By the way, I mean, because I write a lot of music like this, and I know the songs I've written where the melody's not like, or maybe there's barely a melody or not a melody, and I know it's me, like that needs to spend the time to do it, and I know it's gonna suck, and it's gonna take forever, and I might not ever really be happy with it. Like there's all these things that I know that could happen. But then but it just takes time, you know, it just takes, it's not like the other stuff. Like I could come up with the craziest weird chord progression stuff, atonally, whatever, with crazy odd time signatures, and it'd probably sound really cool. And I could do that tomorrow. Like I come up with give me a time signature, give me 5 time signatures. I'll make sure the song has it. Give me 30 tonalities and I'll make sure they're all in there. Sure, no problem. You know? And it'll probably fit a certain mold or whatever. But yeah, actually coming up with a strong melody. So I don't know how we got here because I was just
I don't know either. We were
complaining about stuff. So
I have to complain too.
All right, let's complain.
Let's complain. I mean, sometimes stuff just happens where things are unusable in the studio. I remember doing that when I was recording on a friend of mine's album. I did like I had one track, and I did this whole thing in like an alter tuning. This was back when I was in Buffalo, and you know everything was laid out. Drums, bass, all the vocals were done. It was just waiting on the guitar. So I went in, played it, nailed it after a bit. You know, I was still pretty green in the studio in those days, but got it done. Sounded great, like it was all mixed. And then the drums were off. So he had to redo everything. And so all that, it was just like poof. And I got thanked on the album for all the instruments you don't hear. You know, it's like a take. It's not like I'm ticked about it or anything like that. It was just like one of those crazy flukes that just kind of happens. It's like, oh, man. But my biggest complaint in terms of bandmate was when I was working with somebody that won't be named just because of things. And, you know, I worked with this particular artist for a while and learned all of their tunes. Learned them by ear, but then also got the charts to make sure that I was right.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, oh, we're getting these from a Grammy award-winning recording engineer or producer and so on. I'm like, I don't really care about that, but just get me the charts, okay? It doesn't matter how good, just give me the charts. That's all. So I got them. And it's like, okay, hey, I was right. You know, it's like off a little bit on this one. Same chord, but I was missing an extra note, whatever. So, and I learned all the music, worked with this person for months, getting it all ready. Day of the gig, show up, keyboard player there. It's me, a keyboard player, and the other person. And we get ready, and we do the sound check. And they're like, oh, you don't need to do a sound check. And I'm like, why don't I need to do a sound check? They're like, oh, because you're just going to be, they're going to be playing to a track.
Nice.
And I'm like, what? You know, excuse me. And they could probably tell by the look on my face. I don't know if I told the story on the podcast before.
I don't think so.
I was like,
I don't think I've heard this one.
Oh, you haven't heard this one. So, anyways, they're like, yeah, you're not gonna be plugged in. They're gonna perform to a track. And I was like,
it's like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You know, at least the Super Bowl has some justification to it. This is just kind of like, I spent months away from my kids, away from, you know, other things that I could be doing, learning this, frankly, boring pop music, you know, for a paycheck. And now I don't even get to play it. I'm saying, and like they look.
At least you sounded really good.
Maybe, you know, it's whatever. But I was livid. Like I was just super pissed because it's like if I would have known that, I wouldn't have cared had I known that before the day of the show. But springing that at me on the day of the show is like,
oh yeah.
The hell, you know, like I'm paying for a babysitter, I'm paying for this, I took time away, and I would not have done it if I was just going to mime, you know, or maybe I would have if it was the same amount of money, because then I would just like, okay, whatever, and then play the guitar, you know. And so I get up there, and I was furious on the inside. I'm just like, you wasted months of my time learning this pop music that is just, frankly bores me to tears, and I think is an insult to most music. But whatever, it's that whatever. Um, so I like the
Why did it take
producer.
you months, Adam? It should take like 30 minutes. Come on.
Oh, that was rehearsing, not in terms of learning the music. That was rehearsing. Like here's another record. Oh, we got to rehearse with this. Let's rehearse with this. Let's perform this here and so on.
Oh,
And
so
not
you were so
performing, but,
bad that they had to get backing tracks.
you're a son of a bitch sometimes. No, it had nothing to do with making sure that it was going right. You know this stuff. But anyways, so like they could clearly tell that I was super aggravated, and they're like, don't worry, we're gonna double your pay. I'm like, okay, problem solved.
Yeah.
In one sense, I'm like, all right.
And then you were like spinning the guitar and like.
Yeah, I actually just like took on my clothes and played it in front of me to make it seem like I was playing with other
you're like Pat Metheny.
Yeah, exactly. In the Speedo. So but no, it was just like, that was one of the most memorable things that I was just like, that never again, like never again. And I don't want to say there's
quadruple pay.
Quadruple pay, I'd do it again. But that's as long as it's exponential quadruple, not like 4 times the original, but 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Then for sure. But that was one of the biggest things where I was like, what the heck, And that is why I don't work with that person anymore. And if somebody asked me about it, I'd be like, just don't. And I remember seeing a video of another colleague of mine having to work with this person, and I was tempted to reach out to see how it went. They'd be like, "Oh, really? You're doing that? Nah, it's not worth it. Let's be the adult here instead of trying to stir up bad blood." But that was definitely super frustrating. Other than that, like, I think I've been lucky because most of the people that I've worked with have been. Even if they were amateurs, they've been professional, like in the sense of just like,
sure.
Yeah, we'll get it ready, everything's set, and so. No, I'm going to take that back. There was one other person that I was working with, doing a certain like monthly gig, and I'm trying to be as vague as possible, and they were the contact person for this gig, and I guess during one of the performances, he like. He, not that that's going to really narrow it down, but they just got they lost their shit on the people that they were coaching. Like, it was totally derogatory, totally uncalled for statements. And the place that he was working with reached out to me. They're like, listen, we just had a really bad experience with such and such a person. They were really, obscene, and it happened to be very derogatory towards this group of people, so on and so forth, so we're not going to work with them anymore. Would you still work with us? And I'm like, are you still paying? They're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, of course. It's like, just because this guy happened to be, a total jerk about particular situation, that's fine. And then that person reached out to me and asked me not to work with them. And I'm like, they're paying me. I'm not doing this for loyalty. This is a paycheck, dude. This is what I do for a living. And you're going to tell me not to work with them because of some beef that you have? That's not the way that this goes. This is professional musicians. Like, I don't care. I really don't.
Sure.
Your checks don't bounce. And you're not going to be the one getting me additional gigs. So why the heck would I do? And I was like, no. Like, it's like, I know that they were going to be ticked. And I knew that they knew that I knew. And I'm like, I really just don't care.
Sure.
This is a paycheck. And I still work with these other people, every couple of months, because this is what I do for a living. And I'm not going to have petty things that you have a problem with get in the way of me making money. Like, I don't know if that caused him to start bad. I just don't care.
Sure.
I'm like, whatever. I'm still getting gigs, so it's clearly not affecting me that much. But that was really shocking to me to see that level of unprofessionalism.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
I don't either. I mean, now the only thing I can say that happens with part of it is there's clearly a decent amount of ego to be thrown around in the music world. Sure.
Really?
Yeah, go figure. And everybody's got a little bit invested. Duh. So do I. But at the same time, if there's money on the line, I'm your hired employee when you put a check in my hands. So I do whatever you want musically. That's just it. That's the way that this goes.
Right.
Write me the check. I don't care what you want me to play. I expect the terms of the contract to be honored at the beginning. Like when we're saying we have a performance, I'm going to perform. I'm not going to play to a track. I'm going to actually perform it. But other than that, it's like that's just the way that it is. It's like I'm a hired gun, or a mercenary, sure. And that every professional musician is that. It's like I'm not here to give you my opinion. I'm here to do what you want me to do. That's it.
Yep.
And I represent people that I sub for, and people that I sub for me represent me. So I expect that same level, and that's why I have a close net section of people where it's like, call this guy if I can't do the gig, and that's just the way that it should be. And I think those are the guys that get the continual work, are the guys that are, one, outside of being good and decent musicians, they're not jerks. They're reliable. They do their job. They don't complain. They don't complain, or they don't complain about the situation of other people, and they just do it. That's it. And then
any interview you talk to people, especially who tour or play around, and I'm gonna pick on like bigger artists, right? But they're like, well, it's one thing to be a good player, but the hang has to be good. Like you can't be like, no, I mean, if you're gonna be on the road with somebody, and I'm picking on that side of it, like you're not gonna sit in a bus for 3 months with somebody who's just annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want somebody that's like chill and like fun to hang out with and funny and
generally like you can done it and fine like that.
You don't have to like walk on eggshells around like you're not gonna want any of those things.
No, not at all. The eggshell things is like not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean you just can't. I mean, and it's just not. That's not to pick on anyone. That's just
being an adult.
Yeah, I mean like being on the road with people and like sleeping on couches and stuff. I mean like. You can't be like all cranky about stuff all the time. It's not really acceptable.
Yeah, and I'm generally like I tend to be intense, but I'm generally laid back in the sense of like life situations of like, okay, whatever, stuff happens. It takes a lot to piss me off in that regard. But if I do get there, it's generally tough for me to bring it down a level afterward. Money helps. I'm a little bit of a whore in that regard. It's like, how much? Okay, sure, fine.
I feel much better, yeah.
Yeah, I suddenly feel better. But that's also has to do with some advice that an old teacher, not Steve, told me. He's like, you never turn down a gig. He's like, price it to where it's worth your time.
Yeah.
If you don't get it, then you're not turning it down. But you're also, if you do get it, it's worth your time. It's like that's me, and weddings generally get pretty expensive if I don't want to do it. And that's why I don't list the prices. Like I have a number that always makes a wedding worth my time.
$1 million.
Yeah, $1 million. It's whatever the Dr. Evil thing that he does with his hand.
I will do all your weddings. I'll do a wedding every day for people. Yeah. If you want to get married every day for $1 million,
I'm in. Yep, I'm totally in.
For a year, just for a year.
Just for a week would be fine by me, and then leaving the hell alone. But the underlying thing is like it amazes to me to see the amount of just sheer unadulted, like just the immaturity is what it is. I mean,
I noticed Red Side Visible. At one point, we had a bunch of instruments. I'm gonna not put any names in here too, but in a band, like it gets the more people you add, it's like an exponentially more difficult to get schedules sorted.
Oh God, yeah.
And so that when you do, now you have like 9 people to get a rehearsal in, and you finally find a time, and then like 2 or 3 of the people don't show up, like, and they don't tell you, and then like they text like an hour later in the rehearsal, like, "Oh man, totally forgot, sorry, catch you next time," or whatever. You're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
So that's a big reason why that kind of dissolved too. Is just it was getting like unmanageable.
Yeah, well, when you're that big, that's kind of crazy. I mean,
it would have been cool, and I think we didn't have lots of money thrown around. Perhaps if you were paying people $150 a rehearsal or whatever, which is what totally. Like I don't know what Zappa paid for rehearsal, but that's what you had to pay for rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
And we can't do that when you're poor and whatever. See, when you're younger, you can do it.
Philip Glass drove a taxi to pay his musicians, you know, and that's just it. I mean, I don't think you could drive a taxi nowadays and afford to pay musicians on top of that, but clearly back in the 70s and 80s, it was doable.
Sure.
But obviously money is a huge motivator and a huge shut up and play thing with that, because eventually you get somebody's attention with the numbers. That's just it. Like, and that would go with anybody on most things. So, no, okay. It's like as the number keeps getting bigger, you're gonna say yes to it.
You know, it's an interesting thing too, particularly with non-guitarists. If you give them a chart, then they're gonna stick 100% to the chart, and that can be good or bad, but it's mostly bad, I think. Like, it's good in that they're playing notes that are right and that whether you're in your head, but it's bad because it's like the expectation is that you somehow know all about saxophone when you don't really play saxophone. And it would be nice. And I wonder, it'd be cool to get a good LA session person in here, and talk to them on any instrument. Let's start pulling around and see if I can find somebody, because I'm curious. Or maybe not even, it doesn't have to be a session player. Let's say a hired gun, like live player too, like that does it for a living. Like that's their real living, is touring around in different bands and whatever. And just how much of it's on the page, I'm assuming not very much actually, but, and probably because of this reason, people will just stick to the page unless you just say, hey, here's a track. Will you play an E minor chord or whatever for me? And then you kind of have to do your thing. You know, it's kind of like when you play, like in pit orchestras or whatever, some of the scores are they're really written and they're notated.
Yep.
And you're like, you've never even seen a guitar before, have you? You know?
That's
you don't even know what range there is on a guitar, do you?
No. That chord has 6 different notes.
Yeah.
And
they're all right next to each other.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's some minor seconds the entire time.
Right.
It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, right. You have but then some of them are like, they don't even try, right? They just put like chord chart or whatever, like, because they know, they're like, and which one comes out better is the one that they're like, hey, you're a guitar player, play guitar. Like I'm taking this class with Rodney Jones, and he used to play with Dizzy Gillespie, and he talks about how he's like, one time, so he started playing with Dizzy Gillespie when he was 19, right? So he's just a baby. And here, it's like the biggest jazz musician in the world. And he's playing with him 19, and he said one time he asked Dizzy, he's like, man, so like, what should I be playing or whatever? And Dizzy was like, well, I'm not a guitar player. You're the guitar player. Mm-hmm. If I knew what to play, then I wouldn't need you. Basically. Yeah. So he's like, all right, I'm not going to ask you again. But basically it was like, you're a guitar player. Like, you know how a guitar works. I don't know how a guitar works. I'm not going to tell you how to play it. Like, you need to know how to play it. Like, if you don't know how to play it, then I don't want you in my band. Like, so I think it's unfortunate sometimes when you write stuff out. Man, we're really going down different rabbit holes. But
yeah, whatever. We always do this. Rabbit holes. I mean, we should be the hunting podcast.
Yeah, but it's like, you write music out and people just follow it, and that's sort of a bad thing, because like, well, if you were a sax player or you play flute, like, what would you have done? Like, I always want to say that, but then if you write the chart out, then they're like, it's like the blinders are on. And you can't get them to be like, well, oh yeah, no, flute, we would normally do something more like this. Oh, that's cool. We should do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that also happens to do with the idea of like, if you're writing something up and you're paying somebody, they're going to, if somebody wrote something up for me.
Sure, they feel obligated, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to play what's on the page. And that's
sure,
thing.
Yeah.
And that, like, unless they're like, give me some feedback with that.
Yeah, so that's what I always try to do. But yeah, it'd be interesting to say if somebody wrote this really through composed thing to you, and they're like, well, what do you think about measure 57? Like, is that something you would normally, like, how would you change it? And you're like, and let's just say it's something that was kind of like awkward, like an awkward part, because it wasn't very guitar friendly.
Yeah.
But then you would be like, well, should I change it? Because I did work on that for a while, and now I can sort of get it. And I mean, what if I change it? It might not be that good or whatever. And they're really thinking like, please change it because I really don't know what I'm doing on that spot. Yeah. I just copied that in Finale and I moved it over, you know. And
the class, the arranging class that we took together, or not together. You were in an arranging class, and it was like you needed a classical guitar, so I came in and played for it or something.
Okay.
And then while I was there, one of your classmates, I can't remember what his name was, had like the same arrangement. And he's like, "Hey, could you play this like now?" And I was like, "Okay." And I looked at it and I was like, "Clearly, this guy just copy pasted the guitar."
Copy pasted.
Yeah, it's like slang for copy paste, but copy pasta.
I never heard that before. Yeah, I just learned something new.
Yeah,
it's really still stupid, but it's all right.
It is. I'm not saying that it's brilliant. I'm just saying it's from my kids' YouTube videos or whatever.
It's a pizza pie. Yeah.
Copy pasta. It's an Italian thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm like looking at it, and it's like, you know, like high A above the staff and chords underneath it, and I'm like, yeah, or not like the first line above the staff, high A, but like an octave above that, and it's like, yeah, sight read this, and then shift down to the first, and like I'm like, and Dr. Wilding, he was running the class. He asked for my input like after that, and I was like, yeah, this is impossible. Like, it's not like okay, let me rephrase it. It's not impossible, but that is unnecessarily difficult. Like, there's other ways to notate this to have it much easier reaching. Like, you want me to play up here like these chords when
I mean, if you're not a guitar player though, it's hard to know that stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, I've certainly done.
That was clearly a case of copied from this part, put into this. And there, I have a guitar part.
I remember I did this. So, like, it was funny. I took classical orchestration, right? At the same time, I took jazz arranging. And the orchestration class was so easy. Like, it was like, comparatively speaking, it was just like baby lesson number 1 or whatever. Just because the harmony was so much easier. So there's all these rules, and like when you're writing for a big band, like even though like let's say that for that chord for that measure it's F7, but you don't harmonize F7. That it doesn't work like that. You have to have forward motion going on throughout. So every note, let's say it was an 8th note line, right? Every one of those chords has to lead into the next chord and lead into the next chord. So even though it's F7 is the main chord, there's like this harmonic thing happening where they're always resolving. So you have these constant, like, you might play like a C sharp whatever chord in the middle of that, you know, to get to some other chord, so that it finally lands on the F7 on like the whatever beat, you know. So there's, or more likely, like maybe F7 was the first one, but all that's leading to the next chord, which is a E flat minor or something. So all 7 chords, all the harmony that's happening with every instrument has to get to that E flat minor in the coolest way you can think of. So you have to sort of like backtrack to get to there and the F7 should go, whatever. Anyway, so it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. And the reason I brought this up is I remember I wrote the big band chart in C, because all the instruments get transposed.
Yeah.
And just so I could, wrap my head around it, because you can't, I'm going to do all the transposing in my head. But anyway, I remember I moved all the parts to the saxes. They were just like out of range or whatever, and you're like, dang it. Like, you spent all this time like trying to get it, and you sort of know the range. Like, you looked at the range thing, but there's, you're thinking about like 10 instruments or whatever, and they all have different ranges, and you're trying to, it's just like, you finally get it sounding good and it's in C, and then you move it to the transpositions, and you're like, son of a, this is not going to work.
Yeah, I need another drink. Damn it.
We got to start all over again, because now, every voicing's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that is the worst thing. Oh, I remember doing that when I was in school. It's like, hey, I've solved the problem.
Yeah, it's not like you, just do a different octave, because then those voicings all get weird, and then you have, My professor, the dreaded minor ninth. That was really the only interval he was really against.
Hmm.
He's like, she couldn't have dreaded minor ninth, and he would notice probably the best ears of anyone I've ever met, and not a perfect pitch either, just like ridiculous relative pitch. So I could hear everything. So he'd just be like, nope. Like he would, did you see this? The tenor and the trumpet, the third trumpet, or I mean, like, you're like, dang it. You didn't see it because you just weren't there. So you had to catch, that was about the only one you had to catch. But anyway.
No, I
really fascinating. Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, so I feel for the person writing in the weird, guitar thing. The thing would be like, hey, if he would have said like a day before, hey, I heard you're playing with this thing for Tim. Could you look at my thing and see if it makes any sense or whatever? Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, yeah, this isn't really working, and this isn't really working. Yeah. Make sure you move this. I can't really do that. Like, that's not a very guitar friendly.
It's like I could do it, but in terms of difficulty on literally just getting handed the music and here, play this, it's like, it isn't going to come out well. Like I distinctly remember playing that, and I'm like, I look at it and I'm playing it. I'm like, I'm going to wait a beat and then come in on the beat 2 of the next bar, because that shift is not going to happen like right out the gate. Now without me practicing it. And I did that. And then like that, then Wilding asked me about my input, and I was like, well, this is really, really awkward stuff. Not impossible, but the amount of work in order to get it to sound good for the payoff is stupidly ratioed. Just like, it's like, God, why would I work that hard? There's a composer friend of mine that had some things like that, where it's like, yeah, that could it be done? Yes. Is it going to take me like a month and a half to work up 3 beats? Yes. So let's know. We're thinning this out very, very much. Done. It's just part of it. And that, like the last project that I worked on for the soundtrack thing for that game, like not
did that game come out yet?
Oh God, yeah. Don't mention it. It's awful.
All right, you'll have to send it to me out.
No, I don't think I will.
I think I'm gonna make you. I had to hear about this thing for a while, and I listened to some of it. Come on.
Like the soundtrack was the best part, but that's also like, oh God, it was like,
you don't count though, because you're like a Mr. Gamer, so.
No, dude, listen, I loaded it up for my sons to play, thinking like, hey, I can bond with them over this. And they're like, Dad, this is not fun. After 10 minutes, and I'm like, oof, that's scathing. My kids that play Roblox and all these other stupid games would think the one that I worked on is awful. So it's like, yeah, nope, that whatever.
You better send it to me. I'm gonna make you.
All right, fine. But
not that I don't like any game. So if I can make it even 5 minutes, then that's pretty good. That's probably a good game.
That would be impressive, because I gave it like 10 minutes, and I'm like, and I thought it was like, okay, this is pre-alpha. Don't be too hard on it, whatever. And then I didn't really touch it till like the near done beta, and I was like, this isn't that much.
It's all right.
And sure enough, when I was working on that, like I wrote my own track for it, but I also recorded guitars for some other people, and one of the guys, it's working with a composer. I mean, he wasn't a bad composer in the way least, but he was a picky composer. So eventually, like, after many back and forth track sessions, send it out, get it back, send it out, get it back, send it out, get it back. It was like, all right, dude, can we just FaceTime while I record this? Because this is getting it. And that was like the most brilliant thing ever. I had like all the mics set up, and I had them on a FaceTime camera like angled at me, and I'm like, okay, tell me what you want. Like, let's go. And then I'd hit the record and just do it. And, and that took like, what would have been weeks of work. We got done in like 2 hours.
Sure.
And nailed it. And then he had another thing that he wanted to play for it. That was really hard. I got it, but it was, then he was like, yeah, I'm just going to use the keyboard part that I wrote for it rather than the guitar thing. And I was like, all right, fine. Of course, that was like, I caught COVID right in the middle of learning it. So that like set me behind like a good week of not touching my guitar. I could care less at that point. But the, like it was, what was it? It was septuplets at 70 or 80 beats a minute. So like constant, like it was like flying, you
Yeah.
know. And, I was like, yeah, this is going to take me a little bit to work up, and it was all layered guitars, so it'd be like three guitars harmonized with that, and I had to use the eight string in it to get to like the low parts, which was cool sounding, but it just never it didn't work. So that I just got too far behind, you
Yeah.
know, and that's that. And he was like, yeah, I'll just use this, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I was still like recovering, though I wasn't sick. It was still like I was getting tired all the time, but you know, it's just part of working in music. You'll get stuff and you'll work at it, and sometimes it'll work. Other times you'll get stuff and it won't.
Sure.
You know,
that reminds me of the there was a track on the first Red Side Visible record, Never Turn, that Chris wrote, and like it had everything was notated, all the guitar parts.
Yeah.
And it was like this 4-part harmony, like choral harmony kind of thing. Yeah. And it was fast. And I tried for the longest time to like play it as a solo piece. But it was like all these eighth note, it was like playing it was like church choir.
Forget it.
It was like the Lutheran church book, whatever, like 4-part harmonies moving, whatever. And I'm just like, and a lot of it was like not possible guitar fingerings, a lot of thirds or whatever. So it was like all thirds and like you're just moving around and, so anyway, I recorded each one as an individual track, each line.
Oh yeah, that's what you got to do.
But it doesn't have the same quality too, though, right? It ended up sounding kind of like, Queen or something, right? But it's actually kind of cool in a way. And I never think to write like that. I probably should, but it's like it was just interesting, was because I was like, man, I can't play this. Like I tried for the longest time. I'm like, I can't.
Oh yeah, that's what makes Bach so damn difficult. As soon as it gets to multi-part counterpoint, 2 is like, all right, I can handle this. 3 is like, all right, this is going to be tricky. I can kind of maintain it. 4 is like, yeah, forget it. It's not going to happen. Like it'll happen maybe for like a beat and then it's done. Because you just get.
I got that voicing. Got it.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's it. Can we punch that? All right, let's punch the next one. As I get my foot involved to fret that particular note.
Yeah, you just need those like little pedals to just record an eighth note of it.
Whatever works to get the thing done.
Yeah, that's how I would have had to do that, if anything.
Yeah, I remember when COVID hit, I was like, I'm going to transcribe a Bach chorale a week, and then after one attempt, it was like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. Like, there's 4-part choral music does not go on the guitar that well, and like the level of difficulty just shot up to the point where it's like, this is stupid, and then I looked I looked online, and now I realize why nobody else did that. It's like, oh yeah, because
what's funny, I remember, so I went to Mount Union for a year, and I sort of was looking to minor in piano too, as well as guitar, and I was taking lessons. But it was all the I'm gonna turn this or bring this back, but because it was like a church school or whatever, like you had to play out of the Lutheran, I don't know, what is it called, hymnal or whatever, the hymnal. That's all like these 4-part harmony things, which is actually pretty difficult. Like, and like especially reading it, like you got to spend time with it. And I remember coming to Akron later, a couple years later or whatever, and it was like whatever their piano test was to test out of all the piano like it was so easy. Like comparison.
Lucky you.
And I hadn't played piano for like 3 years, but because I was in New York City or whatever, maybe it was 5 years. I really hadn't played. I didn't have a piano, so I wasn't playing it or a keyboard or anything. And I started like, wait, this is the. Because like compared to like now I was doing other stuff too. I was doing like Chopin and whatever, like trying to like there was a point where I almost dropped guitar actually.
Nice.
Because I really was close, so close. And it was mostly because of composing. I just feel like piano's a little bit easier to compose on.
You have access to everything.
Yeah, you have access, and you can just those 4-part harmony. Like it was probably a little bit of that. That was during those years too. It was like because I was playing so much piano, and like there was just certain things like I would never be able to play that on guitar. I don't even have access to really play that on guitar. Which means that you can't. It's hard to think like that, at the same time, right? As for composing. But anyway, Yeah, I just remember going to Akron. I'm like I was a little worried about the piano test thing. I'm like I think I can test out of this. And I remember I'm like, really? This was what it was. Like,
God, if only I would have known that.
but it was the hymnal. The hymnal made it so much easier because that was way harder than like most things to read, at least for me. Because you're literally four parts just changing all the time, you know.
God, I hated having to take.
I remember. I do remember you complaining about piano a lot.
Oh God, all the damn time. I mean, it's like I mean, I get why they put everybody into it, but at the same time, they're like, well, you need to know have an instrument that can harmonize. I have an instrument that can harmonize. That's what I'm playing on. You know, I don't ever intend to play.
But yeah, but is that a toy or a real instrument?
Exactly, exactly. Like
I think I mentioned that on here before, or at least to you. I think it might have been that orchestration class, which was like my last year or whatever. And the like a classical trumpet player, that was his major, was like, so what are you even gonna do with guitar? Like, and I was like, this was in the semester, like we had known each other, you know, at this point. I mean, I wasn't like a friend with them or whatever, but we were in the class. It's like we were acquaintances at least. And I'm just thinking like, well, like I can get gigs. And I could like, I'm like, what are you gonna do with? I mean, I don't even remember if I said it because I was kind of like, but I was thinking like, what are you gonna do with classical trumpet? Like, I'm like, what is there like 50 symphonies in the country you could play in, and like, there's probably 500 people auditioning for the one trumpet role in each one, you know, like
fiercely competitive. I mean,
it's like you don't. There's nothing against classical trumpet. It's fantastic, right? But
yeah, no, I get it. But at the same time, it's like you went to school for guitar.
Yeah,
I get that. I get the argument. You know, it's like it's a lot of.
Well, I actually, yeah, none of us should have went to school for music, but that's regardless of the fact.
Yeah, regardless of the point. Regardless of that point, let's pick on the things that have actually happened.
Yeah.
So bandmates can be a pain in the ass. And make absolutely terrible decisions that kind of kills your faith in humanity. And pop stars can do the same thing, and whatever. That's just starting to deal with people. And it makes the old adage true of being in a band is like being married to 5 people. You know, and
even like the makeshift projects where everyone is just adding their 2 cents or whatever. I don't know.
You know, and it's a fine line between artistic integrity and being a jerk. Right. You know, like that is it. And even then, like, but in my own head right now, I'm counterpointing that. It's like, well, sometimes you need to be a jerk to have artistic integrity, or you're going to come off like a jerk because you have artistic. It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to work.
It's fine if you do that in some kind of reasonable time frame.
Yes, that's the underlying point.
You know what? How much I would have cared if I would have sent those first couple tracks, even like let's say it was like the third one, and they finally listened.
Yeah, and then
they were, you know, and this was 2 months in or whatever it was, month in, and they were like, "Whoa, like we need to, like that was not what we were thinking at all." That,
but at least it would have been faster than.
I'd have been like, cool. I'll be like, cool. I'll just replace. Like, so what are you thinking? Are you thinking more like this, more like that? Whatever. I don't care. Like, I didn't have any like ego about it. But I also was thinking like, there ain't no way I'm changing this now. Like, I'm not gonna go back and record those parts. Like, we've passed the expiration date. It's It's been a year.
We're done.
Like, I don't care. You can erase everything I did. I could care less, but I am not going back and redoing it. Mm-hmm. Especially, I don't want any association with those people on anything.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally.
Because if they were like that for this, certainly they've been like that on other projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's the underlying thing. It's like if you're working with somebody in an intensely creative environment and they act a particular way, it's not like this is an isolated incident.
Right.
And it's like this is something that's clearly going to repeat any other time that they're in something like this. Sure. So it's a matter of, you know, cutting out the unnecessary toxicity. It's like this is not worth my time, and that's it. And but that's also part of learning to on the professional side of business. or the music business. It's like you're going to run into toxic.
You would have never had to teach my kids to do this the right way.
Yeah.
Like they would have never not listened.
Yeah.
And I haven't told them anything. Like they don't know anything about this. There's no situation, like they just wouldn't have done it. So I don't, that's where I'm like, if my 6-year-old knows better, then like you should know better.
Amen. That is the rule.
And I don't mean like obviously 6-year-olds can be like super sweet to everyone and whatever. That's a whole different thing. But I just mean like
they're not tired. So
yeah, right.
But that's just the way that it goes. It's the way that it is,
Yeah. So if you're in a band right now and you've made it this far in this podcast, and you
don't
can't
be a 6-year-old.
Like take the common courtesy and like, at least be present.
Yes.
If somebody's gonna spend some time and do something for you or with you, I don't know. Just don't ignore it. Don't tell me you don't have freaking 5 minutes to listen to a track. I don't believe you at all. Yeah, I don't care how busy you are. There's never a time in your life you've been too busy to spend 5 minutes to listen to a song.
Especially if you're in on the project.
Yeah, in the project. I mean,
like I make it a priority that any one of my friends that sends me a track to listen to, I listen to. Like I might not be able to get it to right away, but it's on the list.
Maybe it's not today or tomorrow, but it's going to be sometime in the next week.
Yep.
And present, like not just like in the background or whatever.
Like this is something where I throw these on.
All right. Turn everybody else off. Be courteous, especially to your friends or especially a project you're on.
Yes, exactly.
And then don't comment about like, oh man, I don't know about the mix. I had this problem earlier last year, one of those 2 recordings. I'm gonna leave a name out here too, but it was like, oh, the drums are too whatever, this, that. It's like, well, I don't know. I thought they sounded whatever. Oh, well, I just listened to it on my crappy headphones. I'm like, I just spent 20 hours putting this together, and you couldn't spend 5 minutes getting your good pair of headphones. Like, I don't get it. I don't have any sympathy at all. Like,
no, dude, I completely agree with that. That is if it's a professional thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're supposed to be at this level, so why aren't you there when you're on this project? Like I would never listen to somebody's track that they sent me on my iPhone speakers, unless they were at a limit. I'm not going to say never. If they were like, I need this right now, and I don't have access to headphones, and my phone's there, I'm going to just hit play or whichever. But if they wanted real distinct attention, it's like I sit down, boot this up, throw the Odyssey on, sit down, hear what they have coming at me, because that's what I expect somebody else to do. Sure. Like maybe not with Odyssey, but at least something decent so they can pick out the new.
Well, at least something they know that they like. Mm-hmm. If it's their car, sure, whatever. I don't care.
Yep. Oh, the car test, the dreaded car test.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to go in the car and do it, that's totally acceptable to me, because that's probably something that they understand. But yeah, when it's like, well, I listened and like I couldn't hear that one thing I did. But I was, you're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, which part? Oh, yeah, 250. Like, they can even give it, oftentimes, they're like, 257, whatever. I couldn't hear this bass drop or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I listened and it was super loud. And then you're like, I don't know how you didn't hear it or whatever. Like, it was like shaking my house. And they're like, oh, well, I was in the subway and I was listening on my phone speaker, whatever. You're like that. So that's the kind of, that's not this what happened here, by the way, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, that's the kind of responses you get sometimes. It's like, wait, so you just meant, you wanted me to go back and change something for that? Like, I'm not going to change that.
Yep. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
So yeah, don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
Just be courteous.
And respond within a decent amount of time. If you said you listened to something, make sure you've listened to it. Like, come on.
Well, it's like I sent that thing to Bumblefoot and the One Red Side Festival, and he's like, hey, man. He sent me a voice message back. He's like, hey, man. And you could hear the song in the background. Like, I don't know. It was only like 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's like a rock star.
Yeah.
And like touring all around the world and playing for thousands of people and whatever. And like probably gets I don't know how many messages a day. And here he is and spent that time. Like, I mean, he probably gets thousands of messages and he can do that. Like, ain't no chance that you didn't have the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm certain that dude, if he was involved with a project, he would listen. Like, you're never too big of a star to listen to a project you're working on.
Yep.
Anyway. All right.
And there we have it.
Let's get out of here.
Let's end it here. That's it. We're done.
Go away. No,
fine.
You're still here?
I'm still here.
Everyone's still here?
I finished my scotch.